has a VA employee refused to use your sufficient DBQ? I've been getting a lot of complaints from veterans that states, hey, I had a sufficient DBQ and the VA still scheduled a compensation and pension exam. In today's video, I'm going to share with you some valuable information that you can use if you have a sufficient DBQ. Now, towards the end of this video, I'm going to give you 2 questions that you can raise to the decision review officer, also known as DRO, if you have to do an HLR, also known as high-level review. So make sure you stick around. Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Dwayne Kimball, owner and founder of KMD89 VA Claims Consulting, United States Army veteran, and retired VA rating specialist. In today's video, I'm going to share with you something that you can use if you have a sufficient DBQ, okay? A lot of veterans saying, hey, well, wait a minute. I had my doctor complete my DBQ and I submitted it and the VA scheduled a compensation and pension exam when they weren't supposed to, okay? But before we get into today's video, as always, make sure you go out to Amazon and pick up my new book, VA Claim Success, your guide to maximizing your VA compensation benefits, okay? It's an easy read. I promise you can get through it through the weekend if you have nothing else to do, but it will provide a lot of insight as it pertains to the VA claims process, okay? So let's go ahead and get into it. You submitted a DBQ to the VA that was sufficient that they could actually use to rate your claim, but that particular VA employee decided to schedule you for a compensation and pension exam, okay? So I have 3 slides that I'm going to share with you to go over some information that I know that you can use, but definitely stick around because towards the end of this video, I'm going to give you a couple of questions that you can raise to that decision review officer if you have to do a high-level review, okay? So let's go ahead and jump into it. Slide number 1. Here in slide number 1, this is an M21 manual reference, okay? It's a manual reference. You probably heard me talk about the M21 manual reference in some of my other videos. So it states, insufficient examination reports. And it reads, a Department of Veterans Affairs examination report submitted to the rating activity. The rating activity are your raters, your RVSRs, must be complete as possible. Any missing required information on the report makes the examination report insufficient for rating purposes, makes it insufficient. The following are examples of deficiencies that would render an examination report insufficient. Now, these are only a few. There are some others. So if you ask me in the comment section, Dwayne, what about this? What about that? You know, I may or may not answer, but just look at these. And I have one highlighted in red that I'm going to speak to, okay? Now, before I go over these, veterans will call me and they'll say, hey, Dwayne, I submitted a DBQ and I got scheduled for a CMP exam. And I saw your video where you said, don't go to a CMP exam if you had a DBQ. That's not what I said. What I said was, I made the decision not to go to a CMP exam because I knew that my DBQ was sufficient and I didn't want there to be conflicting medical evidence. So a lot of people are misunderstanding that. I didn't say not to go if you had a DBQ. I said what I would do. And then I posed a question, well, why would you go if you had a sufficient DBQ? Okay. And then I also asked the veteran, did you have somebody to review it? And they'll say, oh, well, my doctor. That's not what I asked. That's a yes or no answer. Did you have somebody to review it? No. So how do you know if it's sufficient or not? Okay. But this is the way, one of the ways that you will know. Okay. So the first bullet comment, the examination report is unsigned. On the last page, your examiner has to sign it. The examination report does not address all disabilities for which an examination was requested. So for example, if you're claiming an increase in your back, You need to know what your service connected for the back, and make sure that diagnosis is annotated on page 1. The required questions on the disability benefit questionnaire are unanswered. Now, there are some questions that you may have to check no, or may not, it may say not applicable, or it may say yes or no. Now, one thing that I did, if the answer was no, underneath that, sometimes it'll say if the answer is yes, explain. And in that section, I asked my examiner, put NA. And underneath that, it may say if you check no, give an explanation. You have to give a detailed explanation, all right? Even if it says, are there any additional information? Now you think, well, the doctor left it blank because there was no additional information. Put NA or none, more than likely none. Make sure all these boxes are complete. It may sound like overkill, but I'd rather you have it and not need it opposed to needing it and not having it, okay? Now, what we have highlighted in red here, the required review of the claims folder was not accomplished. This is the #1 mistakes that veterans make. The required review of the claims folder was not accomplished. Now, myself and my staff, we review one of the educational services that we review veterans' DBQ to make sure they are sufficient for rating purposes. Myself and my staff, we adjudicated hundreds of claims using veterans' private medical evidence when we all work for the VA, okay? Now, you have to submit that FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request, to the VA to get a copy of your claims folder. You may have to pull certain information out to give to your private doctor to complete the DBQ. Your private doctor has to have access to the same information that third-party contractor has, okay? If you don't have that CD, you're wasting your money getting that DBQ. You're wasting the money. You may pay for a copay or whatever to get that DBQ if you don't have a copy of your claims folder. That is the main culprit that gets veterans in a bind, okay? The report is missing information pertinent to the specific disability under review, such as the impact of musculoskeletal pain on the functional loss of an affected joint. All boxes have to be checked, okay? A medical opinion is not properly supported by valid rationale and/or by the evidence of record. Now, a rationale is basically explaining why the doctor said yes or no. One thing that you may want in that nexus, medical studies that were done or some type of medical article or some medical literature supporting either, more than likely, the grant, why the doctor gave a positive opinion, okay? Then last, it says a requested medical opinion was not furnished. Now, a lot of veterans will submit a nexus, and I'm like, well, where's the DBQ? Well, they said, and there it is, they said. I did a video where I talked about they said, and I'll link that video to the end of this video, okay? Because they said also gets vets into a lot of trouble, okay? Now, again, this is just a reference, but look down at the bottom. What does it have? Inaccurate examinations, 38 CFR 4.2 and 4.70, okay? Keep that in mind, because again, if you have to go to a high-level review, you want to make yourself familiar with that 38 CFR, okay? Moving right along, slide number 2. Here in slide number 2, this is the M21 reference. Now, a lot of times when I show a slide of M21 reference, I don't include maybe the entire M21, okay? So you have the number of the M21 and the name. Make sure you go out there and do some additional research. But it says, importance of claims folder review. Folder review helps VA ensure that the examiner is given the fullest evidentiary picture possible. The claims folder often contains a history of treatment of the disability at issue. In order to provide an adequate basis for the findings and conclusions of an examination, the examiner needs access to that history. Now they're talking about VA. It applies to a private examiner as well. The examiner needs access to that history. So if someone's charging you 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, whatever the dollar amount is for a DBQ, they need access to that history. You have to have that claims folder, okay? If you don't have it on CD, think about what evidence do you have? Do you have a copy of DD-214? Do you have a copy of your medical records from active duty? Do you have all your rating decisions? Do you have everything that the VA has sent you? Do you have access to your VA progress notes on the VHA side at the VA Medical Center? You have that. You probably have 95% of your claims folder, okay? I also did a video on how to go out and print everything that the VA has sent you from their website. And I'll link that video at the end of this video, okay? Moving right along, slide number 3. Examination requiring claims folder review. If you are claiming any of these conditions, whether it be a new condition or increased secondary, claims folder has to be reviewed, okay? So I'm not going to read the entire first, well, I'll go ahead and read the entire first paragraph. For the reasons discussed in this particular M21, an examiner's review of claims folder contents is potentially beneficial and encouraged in all claim types. However, the examiner must review the claims folder for the following DBQs or claim types. Must. Veterans, stop taking a circle and trying to put it in a square as it pertains to this particular sentence, okay? Service connection under 38 CFR 3.317, cold injury residuals, prisoner of war, Gulf War general medical opinions, including etiology opinions in hearing loss and tinnitus, mental health examinations, TBI examinations. Now, one thing about mental health, you should know what an ACE exam is. And I did a video on that. The VA is not supposed to do an ACE exam for mental conditions, just as a side note. But some examiners been doing it, and the VA employee using it to deny the claim. So the more you know, okay, you got to get educated. TBI examination, musculoskeletal examination involving ankle, back, elbow, foot, hand, fingers, hip, thigh, knee, neck, shoulder, TMJ, that's of the jaw and wrist. BVA remands, 1151 claims, ACE exams, environmental hazards in Iraq, Afghanistan, and other military regulation and IDES claims. IDES is dealing with individuals on active duty. So, sounds like a lot of information, but it's not. Just a recap. If you have a private doctor do a DBQ, you got to have your claims folder. No ifs, ands, buts about it. Oh, Dwayne, what about this? You have to have it. No, you have to have it. Don't ask me, Dwayne, well, I got this paper from urgent care. Can I use that? Yeah, but you need a copy of your claims folder, okay? Now, I told you I had a couple of questions that you can actually ask that decision review officer if you decided that, hey, I know I have a sufficient DBQ, I'm not going to a CMP exam, use it, they refuse to use it and deny you because you refused that exam. But they don't say why they didn't use your DBQ. So if that's something that you do, now I'm not saying you should or shouldn't, you have to make that decision. I already explained what route I went, okay? But let's just say you're not gonna go and you tell them, no, you need to use my DBQ, and they refuse, okay? And they deny it. And you decide, I'm gonna fill out this 20-0996 for a high-level review, and I'm gonna do an informal conference, okay? You get on the phone with the decision review officer. One thing you don't wanna do, oh, let me just tell you my story. People tell me that all the time, and they've already lost me. I know you wanna share your story with someone, but sharing that story 9 times out of 10 is not going to give me the information I need to educate you so you can be successful. If you do it with the decision review officer, guaranteed you lost them, okay? So after they go through and they verify that it's you and they say, okay, well, go ahead and state your case, what you feel it went wrong, okay? One question I have, decision review officer, can you explain to me why does the VA have the disability benefit questionnaires, DBQs, on their website for veterans to print out and take to their doctors? And just see what their response is. Now, if I was still doing hearings, I would say, well, because one, the VA had a backlog years ago, and it was to help reduce the backlog where veterans could go and print the public DBQs and take it to their private examiners. Even in these M21s that I talk about, they're saying sometimes non-VA providers completes DBQs, okay? And then the second question, can you use my sufficient DBQ to grant the benefit? First question, why does the VA have the DBQs on the website for public use? Two, can you use my sufficient DBQ to rate my case? Okay, now they may come back and say on the second question is, well, I haven't reviewed it yet. Can you take a quick second to just do a quick cursor review? There's nothing wrong with asking. They may or may not. I'm pretty sure if they're an employee that's an advocate for a vet, most DBQs you could probably just kind of skim through in a couple minutes, okay? Now, one question not to ask. Why didn't that rater use my DBQ? There's hundreds of raters. There's no way that decision review officer is going to can get in the mind of that rating specialist and say, oh, this is why they didn't use it, okay? I get asked that question as well. I don't know. Sometimes veterans call me and they'll say, hey, I just had my informal conference and they said it was a duty to assist error. Are they going to schedule an exam? I'm like, wait a minute. You actually got off the phone with the person that you should have been asking that question? You didn't ask what the duty to assist error was? You didn't ask them, hey, so where we stand? Are you going to schedule an exam? But you're asking me? I'm not the one adjudicating that claim. So there's a couple of questions that you can ask, but definitely to ask, hey, get in the mind of that rater to see, why they said no. They're not going to be able to tell you that, okay? So make sure you go out, get the book, Amazon, VA Claims Success, or you can just type my name in, Dwayne Kimball. And as always, make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification button, and don't forget to share this video with your fellow veterans. Thank you.